every single link, every single. We're so glad that you can join us. So gift exchanges. I always know people who are going to gift exchanges and they go, I don't know what to get. As a veteran of many, many gift exchanges, you can never, ever go wrong with a furry blanket. Every single store sells them from Target to Ross to whatever. Those fake furry blankets they have, and they've got them in a multitude of colors. They're never more than $20 because they're machine washable. You take one of those and a bottle of wine and put them in a gift bag and watch people fight at the White Elephant gift exchange for that furry blanket and that bottle of wine. And if people don't drink, you put in a big old container of gourmet hot chocolate and some shortbread cookies, and people will go to the mat for a furry blanket. It never disappoints. And the good news is, if it's a true white elephant gift exchange, you could technically steal your own gift back. Then you get the furry blanket and the cocoa and the cookies. And I'm not saying I've done that before, but I've done that before.
Well, isn't it interesting how the idea of like a furry blanket, like something that is just fuzzy and warm that we can wrap ourselves in, it just feels so good. And I think it comes to that warming thing. It's like we're looking for something that gives us that inner warmth. And
Yes.
the idea of those things, I think, it's amazing. It is. It's really a universal kind of thing, especially, this time of year if you're living in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yes, when it's so chilly. There is a really incredible book, and I don't know that I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but it's worth mentioning again. There is a book by Katherine May, and her first name is spelled with a K, and her last name is like the month of May. It's called Wintering: The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times. I can see you
I
laughing.
have that book pulled up before the podcast. I was like, oh, I'm going to pull up this as a resource because I want to be sure and mention it. I was like, no way.
It's
You just
so
said that.
good, isn't it? Yeah, it's just fantastic. And it's a lovely thing too. I have not only read it, but I always buy multiple copies. And it's something to put in the furry blanket bag. Because everybody I have ever run into has loved this book.
Yeah,
So,
in fact, I haven't read it, but my mom,
oh,
when I was telling her about how Elle was telling me I need to rest and rest until the spring, and I was saying, I think I'm not well versed in how to rest. There seems to be lay around in my pajamas and don't do anything, or there's doing. And I know that there's this whole world that I'm meant to explore and do more of in this rest. And it's so funny because I could probably tell somebody else what to do or how to do it, but when it's yourself, it's just everything sometimes goes out the window. And
yeah.
she had sent me this, and it was on Facebook, and so they had a description of the different types of things that she talks about in the book. And I thought that is exactly part of what it is that I need to do. It's like the talking about the power of pause and how nature draws in, and kind of facing the darkness to find the light, like going ahead and looking at those things that have been plaguing us that we've been ignoring, and nature as sanctuary and self-compassion and savoring things and redefining productivity and comfort rituals and finding your wintering practices and things. And I was like, oh, this is exactly what I need.
It's fantastic. And it's hard to do. I mean, if you think about it, I actually am in the middle of conducting a little experiment. And I hope I do have some people who I know listen to the podcast that are part of this experiment and they're unaware. So I hope they don't catch on when I talk about this. But I realized the other day I was out with a group of female friends and we get together. And the first thing that happens is we all basically start talking about how insanely busy we are. Oh my God, I'm so busy. I have to do this and this and this. We're all saying what our schedules are. And I know I'm guilty of that. I have left you countless Marcos you probably didn't need to listen to that were literally just me telling you how busy I was, right? And then I got together with another friend who is dear, but I realize we almost try to one up each other when we meet on how busy we are. Like I'll say, "Oh, I've got like 9 things in the next 2 days." And then she'll add, "Yeah, I've got that." And then I also picked up an extra shift. And the next thing I know, most of our conversation is just us moaning about how overextended we are, which is something in our control for the most part, because a lot of the things that are on our list, we said yes to doing them. And the other day I thought, our society is very competitive and we make people at work feel guilty for taking vacation or for, God forbid, giving birth and wanting time at home with their children. These are things that we end up having to fight for. You see people all the time going, "Oh, I just won't go on vacation," or "I'm going on vacation, but I'll be available by phone." No, it's vacation. And when you normalize that level of busyness, then the people who actually do want a healthy life where they take that time feel pressured to not do so. And I started thinking, oh man, I'm part of the problem here. All I do is talk about, I've got so much to do, right? And so instead, I decided what I was going to do when I ran into these people next time was I was going to brag about how I had rested and see if that changed the dynamic. See if they would then start trying to one up me on rest.
I
Or
love it.
if they start saying, oh, I need to do more of that. I actually would love to have a rest off with a lot of my female friends because it seems, especially like at the holidays, a lot of the burden to make things merry and bright falls on the women in the family. I'm not saying all of it, but a lot of it does. That article I was mentioning earlier during our last episode about the woman who spends Thanksgiving and Christmas by herself, she noticed that in her workplace, when there was a holiday get together, if the uh, male employees said, "No, I can't make it," nobody bugged them about it afterwards. But that if she said, "No, I can't make it," they would put her down as attending anyway and start asking her if she wanted to come over and over again. "Well, I can drive you. Well, I can meet you there. Oh, come on, just come for a little time." And she started thinking, why is there no respected, but my no isn't, right? And she just started noticing this and like the whole idea of her mom having a breakdown after Christmas every year. And so I'm like, what would happen if I tried to change that? If instead of whenever I got together with friends, I told them how busy I was, which does nothing but up their stress level and mine. Instead, I told them at least 3 ways I had been a total and absolute slacker. I think I'm afraid to. I think they'll think less of me if I'm not a doer, 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 doer. If I'm not the miracle person who can pull everything off. And oh, I'm so amazing. Who will I be if I do less? And that can be a scary thing when a lot of our communication and identity is built on being superwoman.
Yeah. And one of the things, I love your experiment, by the way. I think that's a really awesome thing because it like instantly gives the other person permission to go, oh, either state something that they did for themselves and you can validate each other for that, or goes, oh my gosh, you rested. It gives me permission to rest. I think
Yes.
that's so wonderful. There's a book, it talks about women and the way that we're conditioned to interact with each other, and that it so much is based on competition. And one of the things that one of my dear friends has kind of implemented, and I realized I need to get back to it because we were really good about it for a while, like in Marcos and in conversations. And what this other person advocates is that you say like 3 brags to the other person as a part of your conversation. Okay, so all right, my 3 brags are, and it could be, I got everything done on that list today and I felt really good. And this, my brag to her, and I was so proud because she's always talking to me about prioritizing pleasure and how important it is to prioritize our own pleasure. And I'm typically not super good about it. And I was so proud of myself. I had this massive inspiration of, there was this shower gel when we went to visit my sister-in-law, they were using it as hand soap, and it smelled so good. I was like, oh my gosh, it felt like being at a spa every time I washed my hands. And I was like, this is amazing. I took a picture of the label. I was like, I've got to get this. And then I got home and I found out it was $50 for like a little squirt pump bottle of this stuff. And I'd instantly stopped. I was like, nope, not going to do it. I cannot spend $50 for hand soap in one bathroom. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And then, but it has been bothering me ever since. And finally, one day I was like, I'm going to do it. This is an act of honoring myself and bringing myself pleasure. The amount of pleasure I got from washing my hands was just insane. And I thought, I am worthy of this and I'm going to splurge and I'm going to do this. It was funny because first I thought I'm going to put it on my Christmas list for my husband, because we put a few things aside of, oh, if need something or somebody needs something or whatever. And then I thought, no, that's not the same. That's still saying, I won't buy this for myself, but I'll let somebody else buy it for me for some sort of special occasion. And I thought, no, it is really important that I buy this for myself and state I am worth prioritizing, and the pleasure that it will bring me is valuable. And so I ordered it and I was so proud of myself. And so I went on Marco. I was like, I have a brag. I bought $50 shower gel to use as hand soap because it will bring me pleasure. And I'm so excited about it. And she was so proud of me. But I think I love the idea of brags because it's amazing how many of our interactions with friends tend to be this, I need you to know that I'm working really hard, that I'm doing something really important. And I think especially those of us that are not working a job outside of the house, there seems to be a sense of, I haven't been out at work all day or doing all these other things. And so I need to kind of prove to you that I'm doing something worthwhile. And in that tends to be the list of stuff that we have to do, or the list of bad things. And it's so amazing how it shifts our conversations to start with that 3 brags. And it's like you're saying something good about yourself, or it's just that I prioritized myself and I did something, or I accomplished something. I got this done and I'm so excited, or I brought this through and I didn't think it was possible for me to do something like that. But I highly recommend that you institute that with your friends and make it where it's like, nope, you have to brag on yourself. You can't brag on your children or something that happened. It has to be something you did. And again, it's not about your accomplishments, but it's like, this is something I'm proud of in myself, or this is something I want to bring forth. And it's a really wonderful practice.
I love that so much because I know I was very much raised to believe you shouldn't brag because people will think you're uppity. And so what quickly happened is I fell into this routine of work all the time, never enjoy the benefit of having worked all the time, you know? Like to be able to say, yes, thank you. I did a good job, because what would people think of you, right? And so saying, I have to tell you 3 things, it gives you license to do that and to say, you know what? I work really hard and I am a good and kind and loving person. And I did something well. And I just love that it puts you out there where you need to do that, where you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, right? I think about, I was a children's theater director for years and years, and I had such a hard time accepting compliments after the show. I mean, it would make me nervous because people would come down and say, wow, you did a lovely job. And I would respond with, oh, yes, the children worked really hard. You know what? I worked really hard too. The whole crew worked really hard. We all worked hard. Something in me just couldn't say, yes, I did. Thank you. And the last night that I was on stage after my final show, it was a real challenge because I walked out and a lot of the families in the audience, I taught their kids for years and they'd been in previous shows. And now some of their kids were seniors in high school or going to college. And I walked out on stage to, end the show and make announcements. And the audience gave me a standing ovation. It's one thing to have somebody say, Well, you did a good job. When there's 300 people clapping for you, like something inside me went, oh my God. And I wanted so badly to turn around and just run backstage because that's the way I was raised to believe I should react. And I thought, you know what? Screw it. And I took a bow. It was the first like big bow I think I had ever taken in, well over a decade of working on this show. And I was proud of myself that I was able to accept appreciation and praise. And more importantly, I was showing the kids on stage that it's okay to accept appreciation and praise. We have to remember there are always little eyes watching us, and what we do really does form how the next generation thinks of themselves. That's how humans work when they're little to the big ones and see, what am I doing? I mean, think about how many people are simply parenting the way their parents did because that's what they know, that's what they saw, whether it's good or not good, or how many people are the way their parents were in relationships because that's what they were exposed to. So, I love that. I'm going to brag about three things. I think it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I really love it. And I was surprised at how hard it was at the beginning because it also forces you to look at yourself and say, what have I done? What am I proud of? And it could be, man, dinner last night was awesome. I made dinner and it was really good. Or, it can be little tiny things, but it's amazing how it shifts the perspective of the way you look at yourself, and it really shifts the relationship that you have and how your conversations go, and helps to bring it into a really different new kind of place. And something that you were saying, I was thinking about, I worked really hard. I did this. I work really hard. And I was thinking that's something in our society too that we tend to equate with worth. Like if it was hard, if I worked really hard, then I have earned the value of whatever it is. Then it's a more valuable thing, that it's more respectable and respected, and
Right.
that this is what it's supposed to be. So when I was high school and stuff, I was trying to decide, what am I going to be? What do I want to do? And there was always that idea of, if you're going to be a professional, if you're going to make something of yourself in your life, you'll be a doctor, a lawyer, one of these kind of basic things. And those were, at least in our culture at that time, those were like the highest things. You'll be a sort of a doctor or lawyer if you want to make something of yourself. And I went to college thinking, okay, I'm going to be a doctor. I want to help people and I love science. So that's what I want to do. I was in college and it was really, really hard. And there were certain things in the chemistry that it just did not work with my brain. It was just constant grinding of something. And I was miserable and I was depressed. And at the same time, I was taking an art class and a music class. And I got the first A plus that this art teacher had given, he said, in years. I'm sure I got an A in the music class, but I didn't value it because it was easy. It came easily. It didn't feel like there was a lot to be done, and I spent a lot of hours doing it, but it didn't feel like work. Now the science classes, I got, low B's and I think C's in it. But I was working so hard. I was trying so hard. And I still at that time couldn't see that I needed to follow the things that just flowed from me. That being in that flow and the things that came easily were my gifts. They were my talents. That was what I was meant to be here doing. And the things that felt like grinding it out were me just swimming upstream and stubbornly deciding. And then I ended up switching colleges and had that sort of epiphany to some extent in the middle of it of, I don't need to be doing this. I hate these classes, and ended up majoring in art and dance. It continues to come back to me that if something is really hard, a lot of times it's because I am not in alignment with it. It's not what I am aligned to be doing. And there is a way of grace and ease that is different. Even if it's something that has to be done, it maybe needs to be approached in a different way. And it's so
Yes.
interesting that we value so much hard work. And that's so much of the cultures that we've come up with. It's all about hard work and grinding it out. But I
Yes.
think we would all be much healthier and much more efficient and effective if we looked at what comes easily. How can I do this with grace and ease? As opposed to grinding it out. And then if we could learn to brag to each other about it, like I had all this stuff and I was trying to figure out how I was going to do it. And then I decided I'm going to just relax and I'm going to give half of that to the angels. And everything just worked out. How cool would it be to be talking to each other about those kinds of things?
Yes. This reminds me of something I had many mentors when I was at the Montessori school, but one of them, Michael, said something once that just rocked my world. And he said, "Do you ever listen to adults when they talk to kids and ask them what they want to be when they grow up?" He said, they say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And the kids go, "An astronaut, a doctor, a lawyer, horse trainer." And he said, "Do you know what the correct answer to that question is? Happy." An adult says to a child, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" The correct answer is happy. It's not your occupation. What you do to pay the bills is not who you are. When we think it is, we identify ourselves by our occupation. And that leads me back to what you were saying before about how hard it is when you are at home. You're working just as hard as someone outside, sometimes harder. If you're raising children and you're running a business, you're doing all these things, trying to keep the house clean and everybody fed. And then we get together with our friends and they say, "How are you?" How much of that list that we give them is us trying to say, "Look, I am worthy of your love. I work hard too." And when we make love contingent on how hard people work, we make approval dependent on that. Our entire society is turned towards who's the richest, whether they earned it themselves or not, right? But we somehow or another think that wealth is a virtue and that it is the benefit of hard work. A lot of generational wealth, the person themselves did not do a lot of work for that. They inherited it, but we still give it this beautiful glow because somebody ahead of them must have worked hard, right? And the real answer, what do you want to be when you grow up, is happy, harmonious, at peace with other people, spreading love. Doesn't matter whether I am the meter reader on the street or a CEO. We lose sight of that quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, I love happy as the answer. And really, that's at the basis of all of what so many times we're striving to get to. It's like, well, if I do this, if I achieve this, if I buy that, if I have this, if I get that award, I will be happy. But after you ask enough questions about, well, why do you want to be that? We think it will bring us happiness. And if we can start from the foundation of happiness, everything's going to flow in a much different way. We tend to think society says, if I have that job, if I have that home, if I have that car, I'll be happy. If we work backwards from happiness, everything is going to be really different. And like you were talking about working hard, there are all these different studies and things that talk about that the people that are, in the 1% of the highest earning, the richest people in the world are not working harder than the everyday person who is working with their hands, who is really doing all the jobs that are keeping our country running. They are working harder and longer hours than the people that are making the absolute most money. And a lot of times it's not necessarily that they inherited it, but that they have structured things to where they're not working so hard. Other people are doing things. So there's definitely that disparity between what we think of and what people talk about as, well, they worked hard. It's not about who worked harder. It's about how it was done. And when it comes to money, a lot of it is also based in what sort of advantages and what sort of positions were people
Yes.
in. Certainly, there's all of that, which we don't need to get into.
Yeah.
But I really encourage us all to just look at how can I be in the flow of things and be, just be guided to that by following what makes me happy. And it's amazing. There are so many incredible stories of people ending up in jobs that you wouldn't have even thought could be a job. It's such a niche little thing, but it was somebody following their bliss. They were just following their joy and doing it. And the more we can do that throughout our lives, stop placing the focus on the hard work, but flowing with what's naturally trying to come forth and how can we work with that.
Several years back, I read this really neat article, and it was an interview with someone who is one of the, for lack of a better term, travel handlers for the Dalai Lama, right? The Dalai Lama travels to different countries. And when he does that, there is a small army of people that are security and making sure he gets to the airport on time, and the hotels and translators and getting him to meet with world leaders and all of these different things. And the guy was talking about how extremely frustrating the first few weeks of working for the Dalai Lama were, because the Dalai Lama doesn't really see things materially. I mean, the guy wears the same thing every day, and he also does not operate on the same time scale we do. So, for example, they'd be coming out of an airport and the Dalai Lama would see a child, and the child would walk up and start talking to him, and then the child's mother would come over, and the Dalai Lama would just sit down and start having a deep conversation with this mother and this child. And all of his handlers are shifting, like the car is waiting, and we've got to go meet the president and the security team, and they're all into these logistics, and they were so wrapped up in time working with someone who time basically he's just gotten rid of the concept. He would tell them, right, wherever I am right now is where I am supposed to be. It's where my work is. I'm here for a reason. And he would say it was absolutely maddening until you finally, and you can't, yell at the Dalai Lama, right? But and the Dalai Lama was clearly aware that some people were going through this, and he would go, "Yes, yes, yes, I know," and just keep talking to the mother and the child. The guy would say, "He just took his sweet time." But then he realized the Dalai Lama is a spiritual leader. He thinks he's supposed to be in a place to respond to people with divine grace, then it doesn't matter who's waiting for him. Dalai Lama said that would work itself out. Like, that world leader had something else he was going to need to put his attention to during that time. And he said it wasn't until he got to the point where he could just breathe and accept that wherever they were at that time was the right place. No matter how long it took, it didn't matter because they were where they needed to be with grace. He said, once I could let go of the concept of time, everything fell into place. Now, a lot of us don't have the schedule of the Dalai Lama, but I remember after reading this article, um, I was a teacher at the time, and the children would arrive for school at about 7:45, 8 in the morning, and they would leave at 3. And I started thinking, rather than having to hit every single mark with a group of 25 children, right? You look up and you go, it's 11:30, it's time for lunch. And what do? You start stressing. I got to get the kids' hands washed and have them sit down and have their lunch boxes. And we say our blessing and then we eat and then we're cleaned up. Instead of having 10,000 little tiny points during the day, what if I just accept that these children are coming in at 8 and they're leaving at 3? And whatever happens between 8 and 3 is going to happen when it happens. If we get to lunch 15 minutes late, so what? No one's waiting outside to pick them up. They're still with me. If we go out to the playground 20 minutes early because the children need it and it's a beautiful day, so what about the schedule? They're still in my care. Nothing changed. And once I could drop all of those little tiny increments, how things were supposed to go, the only deadline I had to hit was at 3 p.m. They needed to be outside and ready to go for the parents to pick them up. That was it. I had one goal to hit time wise, and my stress level dropped so much. And I remember the other teachers that I worked with were still, I could watch them just freaking out. We were supposed to be outside 3 minutes ago. You know what? Little Mary and Johnny need help with tying their shoes. I am in this moment helping them tie their shoes. That's a lesson right there. It's an interaction. Learning to tie your shoes is going to affect you for the rest of your life. That is much more important than whether or not we hit the playground gate on the nose. And it just let everything move into its own time. So there might be places in your day where you can do that, you know? Where can I get rid of the concept of time and therefore let a lot of my frustration and worry go?
Yeah, that it reminds me when our two older children were little and toddlers, and the idea of wait till the last minute, and then it's like, all right, we've got to go down, we've got to get our shoes on and get our coats, and we've got to get out the door, we're going to be late. And those times we were exponentially later because I was stressed. There was this sense of this very, very tight timeline. And a toddler would just throw an absolute fit and refuse to put her shoes on. No matter what, there was no shoe that was going to go on those feet. I realized she was resisting the being rushed. Like you cannot rush a toddler because they're in the Dalai Lama sort of state. There is no such thing as time. I don't know how to read a clock, and why would it matter? If I want to sing a song and play with a bug as I partially tie my shoe or have you put it on, then that's what we're going to do. I've noticed the same thing with horses. There's as saying, take the time it takes so it takes less time. And it's really entirely based in the, rather than coming in with this sense of, all right, I've got 5 minutes. I need to hurry up, grab the saddle. We need to get the girth on. We need to get this stuff up, brush them up, get them up. And then we need to be out there for the lesson, or we need to get on the horse and head out there. The horses respond the same way the toddler would. If they feel rushed and you're just sort of going through the motions and you're tense and you're trying to do it, they will make it infinitely more difficult for you. They won't pick up their feet. They will continue to shake off the saddle pad as you're trying to get it on and then, get the saddle on. They will resist it as much as possible. And sometimes that ends up leading to things that actually can become unsafe by the time you're riding them. And it will actually take a lot more time. But if you just stop and breathe and say, all right, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to connect with you. I'm just going to do what I need to do. We're going to brush you off. I'm going to do it at a pace that feels relaxed. You'll actually end up being on that horse and things will go so much better, so much faster than if you come in with your own agenda and that focus on the time. And it's the same way with the kids. When I would allow a little bit more time and go down, and it would just be like, all right, let's get our shoes on. And no matter how much I wanted to push the whole thing, I would just try and relax and be like, okay, it inevitably, everything flowed more because they didn't feel this pressure and this intensity. And it's amazing how many things, if we can just let go of it, we think we're making things go faster and we think we're staying on time. But I feel like the universe responds to us the same way the horses and the toddlers do. Yes. It's that because when we are attempting it, we're approaching things with that sense of limit. And there's a limited amount of time. We have to go when we're just sort of plowing through life with this sense of we just have to get it done. Life pushes back because that's not how it works. But when we relax into it and take the time it takes, so it takes less time, we just flow into that, everything is different. And it's so interesting. It really wasn't until I was halfway through that story that it dawned on me that, oh my gosh, that really is how the universe reacts. And you will hit every stoplight on the way to the thing. The more stressed you get, the more tractor pulls in front of you. And at least out where Tava and I live, you can be significantly slowed down by a tractor.
Or farm equipment.
Like
Yeah.
that
Farm
that's
equipment going
our
10 miles an hour.
yeah, that's our form of like rush hour out here. But it never fails when you're really in that rushed, pushed kind of hurry. Stuff like that happens. And when you just relax, all of a sudden everything just flows.
It reminds me of a quote from Lord of the Rings. I think it's Gandalf. And he says, "A wizard is never early nor late. He arrives precisely when he means to."
Yes,
And so
I
we can
love
all be
that.
wizards. Well, I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking we might want to bookend this with a lovely song. We came here with just a little idea, and look what happened to us today. We arrived precisely where we needed to.
Exactly. I love that.
Thank you so much. Your voice sounded like one of the crystal bowls today.
It was different. I could hear it in my ears. There was this very different, almost metallic kind of sound. It reminded me somewhat of the Archangel Michael sword sound,
Yes.
but it was broader and different. Yeah, I was thinking, oh, I wonder what it is that they're bringing through. I'd invited Samael and Michael both to come through, but yeah, there was a very different quality in there that I was
Yes.
hearing. I'm glad you could hear it too, because I was thinking, I'd always wonder, is it only sounding that way in my head?
No, it reminded me of when you were playing the bowls. Really nice.
Yeah, very
Thank you so
interesting.
much. And thank you so much for listening, everybody. We have such a good time doing this with you. And until next time, we hope you stay warm, timeless, and cozy.
Absolutely. And strive for grace and ease more so than effort.
And we are so, so grateful for all of you. Happy holidays, however you may spend them, and have a blessed winter until